Before I ask a question, I'd like to recognize Ms. Stanek. She's been in this fight for a long time. We met many years ago, and as a result of your courage to come forward and be willing to take the criticism from some people, that you revealed what was going on in these abortion chambers, babies that you knew that survived an abortion, and that there were instances where they were found in a utility closet and garbage can and a whole bunch of other types of things. Because of your willingness to come forward, there were at least two pieces of major legislation that were passed and are now the law of the land. One is the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, to protect those babies that are born when an abortion was intended, but a live baby was the result. And then also the ban on partial birth abortion. Both of those landmark pieces of legislation, you were absolutely responsible for those things taking place. So thank you for your work. Now a question. If I could go to you, Dr. Levitina. Ms. Zink related her tragic story, and I think we certainly all sympathize with the situation that she faced. She made her choice. Now, you were an abortion doctor for a number of years, and I think you indicated performed 1,200 abortions altogether, and some of those were the total number of abortions, including late-term abortions, or were they just late-term abortions?
Those were total number of abortions I performed in private practice. I performed several hundred more in training. Okay.
So my question is, of those, and I know you've changed your position 180 degrees since then, and I respect you greatly for doing that. But in those abortions that you performed, how many of those abortions would you estimate were cases where you had a baby which faced a severe health problem and maybe a matter of life and death, versus babies which would have been born healthy, perhaps lived 70, 80 years, had children and grandchildren themselves, experienced the same experiences that all the people in this room have, that would have experienced the life that we have? How many of those that face the tragic things that Ms. Zink faced versus probably a healthy existence that we all have? What would be your estimate of that?
I think I can estimate that very well, Congressman. My partners and I did very thorough histories on all of our patients who came in for abortions. We weren't running an abortion mill. This was a routine obstetrics and gynecology practice. We did OB, we did GYN, we did abortions, we did deliveries. We had no financial incentive to push a patient one way or the other. If she wished to have an abortion, we could take care of her. If she wished to deliver her child, we could take care of her. Of the 1,200 abortions that I performed, 2 were cases of rape or incest. Of the other 1,200, approximately a dozen were for fetal malformations. The rest were elective.
So the vast majority of the babies would have been healthy and probably led a productive life.
The vast majority, yes, sir.
And had children of themselves and grandchildren themselves someday.
Probably so.
And I'm not trying to make the pain that you went through any harsher here, but the reality is most of these babies, we talk about the exceptional cases here, like Ms. Zink's, but in the vast majority of the cases, we're talking about ending the lives, the existence of human beings, just like ourselves. My next question. You had mentioned, well, let me ask you this. And I had asked you this question in a previous hearing. What was it that made you change your point of view on this?
I was very pro-choice through medical school and my training, and I guess I proved that by doing abortions in my private practice. In 1984, I lost a child of my own to an auto accident, and through that experience looked very hard at what I was doing as an abortionist, and it became quite intolerable, and I stopped.
Thank you. And finally, you mentioned what a brutal procedure this is, and the nature of it, arms and legs and others, et cetera. But there's also been this idea that a war on women, and which I think is repugnant that people would say that. But is there not a danger to the women themselves that are going through these procedures when you're reaching in? I mean, you mentioned the uterus, for example. You have to be careful you don't perforate the uterus. So is there a danger to the woman that undergoes one of these procedures?
There's always a risk. There's a risk with childbirth. There's a risk with abortion. There's a risk with every medical procedure. There's a risk of infection. There's a risk of perforation of the uterus. There's a risk of death. There's a risk of hemorrhage. In my career, I had the unpleasant experience during one of these abortions. As I said, when you're reaching in with a stainless steel instrument and reaching in, I had the experience of reaching in and pulling. And instead of getting a limb, I got the lady's intestines. Complications do occur.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you. I yield back.